Welcome to STEM Challenges with Mr. Geyer, where we design, build, and create. Hello, and thank you for joining us here today for today's STEM lesson. Today's topic is going to be with a theme of March Madness, and we're going to be creating a basketball shooter. You're going to be making your own hoop, and you're going to be making your own catapult, launch pad, whatever you want to call it, and we're going to be taking some shots at the basketball hoop. And in order to create this, we're going to have to understand a few concepts. Some of these concepts are going to be involving the motion of a projectile. So we're going to talk a little bit about what a projectile is. So a projectile is anything that flies. Our object that is going to be our projectile is going to be our basketball. And when our person throws a basketball, it turns into a projectile. Before, it's just an object because it's sitting, it doesn't have motion. As soon as you have a horizontal and a vertical motion, it turns into a projectile. So we launch it across and it's going to go into our basketball hoop. And once it's in our basketball hoop and it falls to the ground, it then becomes just an object that's sitting. When we talk about motion, most people think of straight line motion, like a toy car traveling across the table. But motion also includes objects that move up and down. This is called vertical motion. First, a force is applied up, but immediately after, gravity starts to act on it and pull it back down. This is Newton's second law. There are two different types of motion. We have horizontal, where you see it with the car, and we have vertical, where you see it with the basketball being tossed up. But when we have both of those things combined, a horizontal and a vertical, it becomes a projectile. So this is what projectile motion is. So look at this sock. We're launching it across the table. We try to launch it straight across, but we have gravity acting on the sock and it pulls it down. So we have to start off with the sock either higher or we have to launch it off a ramp. If we just toss it up and down, we have vertical motion, which is just gravity bringing it back down to the table, and it doesn't get any closer to the basket. If we do a arc, which is the projectile motion, we have horizontal and vertical. This is how we get that parabola shape in order to get our sock into the basket. And that's the combination of horizontal and vertical. And that's projectile motion explained. Airplanes use it. Basketball uses it, as we're going to find out later with our STEM activity. Rockets use it when they go to launch. You can see the shape as it falls, and that's how they decide where rockets land. So, projectile motion, when an object undergoes both horizontal and vertical motion. So first things first is we have to figure out what our projectile is going to be. You can make it a balled up piece of paper with a little bit of tape around it. You can find a little wiffle ball or something out of your toy bin, maybe a marble, maybe a bouncy ball, maybe a ping pong ball. So anything that is circular and has the ability to turn into a projectile will work out just fine. Keep in mind that you're going to be making your launcher about the size of a plastic spoon. So make sure that it's no bigger than about 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches at the biggest. And you also have to think about that whatever your projectile is going to be, you're going to have to make a hoop that's just as big as that. So the smaller the projectile, the smaller your hoop will be. Depending on what you find, you have to make sure that your projectile fits into the hoop. So first, figure out what your projectile is going to be. So you can find everyday items to make your basketball hoop. Make sure that it is something that can fit your projectile. So for here, I have a plastic cup, I have a jar. They both can easily fit your projectiles inside of them. Depending on how challenging you want this to be, you can change the size of the outside of your hoop. So when these hoops are a little bit bigger like this, it's a little bit easier to get the projectile into it, or your basketball, whatever you would like to call it. And you can custom make these designs if you would like to as well. Couple ideas is you can use paper plates, you can use straws, you can use cardboard box. I'm going to show you a couple different variations on how you can make this basketball hoop fit. So I'm going to put the everyday object out of the way. Depending on what you find, you can also cut open a water bottle and use the bottom of the water bottle. That's also a skinnier size where the ball could fit in there nicely. Depending on what you have available, you can do a couple different things. You're also going to have to figure out how to make a backboard to your hoop itself. So you can put the cup and you can tape a paper plate or a piece of cardboard to the back of whatever it is. You can do that same thing with the jar, or you can make it a freestanding object out in the open to make it where you only can do swish shots. So depending on what you want to do, it is okay to do it either way. For the straw example, if you just make a square for your bottom base, so you have a sturdy area for your straw on the bottom, we can go ahead and bend it and just start making a square. And then we are gonna get our second straw. And sometimes you can feed the straws into each other, or what you can do is you can bend the other one in the same exact way. So just line them up, make sure you bend them in the same spot. And then you can tape them together with a little bit of tape. And then you just go ahead and bend it and do the same thing with the other side. This part doesn't have to be perfect as long as it is somewhat stable. So now that you have the base, you're going to want to make the hoop part. So my best recommendation is to figure out what your projectile is, and then you're going to wrap around your straw and then you're going to want to make it a little bit bigger than the actual object. So when it's sitting there, it will be able to go through. So kind of mark where you're going to be doing it, bend the straw a little bit so you can get more of a circular shape. And then make sure that your object is easily going to go through. And then you're going to tape that into place. And then I'd recommend to just go around with your finger a couple times and try to make it as circular as possible. And then what you will do after that is you'll find your straws, and then you're going to go ahead and get your basketball hoop mounted. So you can bend it so it can fit into the bottom, something like that. And then you'll do one of these on each side that will support your hoop. So we'll go ahead and then we're going to tape each part to the straw. So you'll tape it down into this little corner. Putting the tape on the straw piece before you go to hold it may make this process a little bit easier. You'll start to wrap it around. And this process is going to take a couple pieces of tape. And then you'll do the same thing with the other side. So you'll have your one piece, and then go ahead and do the same thing with your other piece. Now that you have your base for your hoop made and ready, you'll be able to attach the center hoop. And to do this, you can just wrap a piece of tape, start it on the inside of the hoop, and then just attach it and wrap it around in a circle. You can bend it a little bit more to get that circular shape that you're looking for. And then test it out, make sure the ball can go in. And then you might want to construct the backboard. So what you'll do is you can grab your paper plate or your cardboard box. Scissors can work just as well on a cardboard box, but it's always easier to use a box cutter. And then what you can do is put your basketball hoop onto the piece of cardboard and just put a little tape to secure it. And then you can draw yourself a little square so you know it's your basketball hoop. And then you can cut the rest of the extra off. So now that you have your basketball hoop, so now that we have our basketball hoop figured out, we have our projectile picked, we are going to create our actual catapult, which is going to be our simulated person shooting the ball into the basket. So realistically, you can use a whole bunch of different items. I've picked a couple pencils, a spoon, and a couple rubber bands. You can replace the spoon by having one more pencil and making a cup for the ball to go in. So you could attach maybe like the end of a tape roll, and you put the pencil in so it holds the ball in place and it launches it. You can make something out of foil, you can make it out of paper and tape. There's a whole bunch of different ways that we can make a little basket that holds the ball in place for when we go to launch. You could also use popsicle sticks. You can use a couple other things as well instead of pencils. For this activity, I'm just using pencils because it's something I had on hand. So for the pencils, I'm gonna go ahead and make a little triangle out of it, and I'm gonna tape them in that formation of a triangle. So hold them in a triangle, and then we're gonna tape them so they stay in that triangle. I'm gonna tape them on one end, grab another piece of tape, tape it on the other end of that pencil, and then just for safekeeping, I'm gonna do one in the middle as well. Just to make sure that these stay in place. Then what we will do is take our other two pencils and put them side by side, and then tape those together. Do it one on each end. So now you have two pencils side by side, and then you have one set of pencils that are set up as a triangle. So then what you're going to do is figure out where this triangle should sit in order to get your spoon a little bit off the ground. So if you look at it, it can sit a little high. You'll be able to get that nice launching action going on. And then we got to figure out where it would be best to put this pencil. So I'm gonna guess it's somewhere around right here. We're gonna tape it to that spot. You can always take it apart and put it in a different spot. It's up to however you create it. So the easiest way to put this together is put it into like an X shape and then wrap the tape down and under. And then do the same thing going in the other direction. So start with your X, and then go down, around, under, and bring it back over. So now it's sturdy, in place. We're gonna attach our spoon. You can do this with either rubber bands or tape. For best effect, I typically do a couple rubber bands. So you're gonna sit here and wrap the rubber bands around it so it stays tight and it doesn't move and it's in its place. And then we have a nice little launching action. So now we'll give it a shot. So we'll put the ball in our little catapult, and we have to adjust to where our projectile it is to shoot. Also, if you hold it down farther, it will shoot farther. It'll launch it way high. So if you just launch it a little bit, you'll be able to do a shootout with your friends. You can test out with your family. You can just practice and do it with yourself. Almost got it that time. So it takes a little practice to get it to aim straight, but you just keep on going until you can make it. Almost. So if you notice, my basketball hoop fell over. One thing that you can do is you can tape it down to whatever desk or table that you're working on. So you can tape it into place. And that will keep it sturdy. And then you can keep on testing and trying it out.